I got beer. Sorry for you guys. We'll keep it brief. No. Okay, so you're with us, Aaron, as well? Does it work?
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so we tried to sum up the day. We talked a lot about IoT or embedded devices of all of the kinds, I guess. All our amazing speakers sort of touched it, not you, Dave, but you're the technical whiz of us anyway, so you need to be here as well. So I was thinking about, let's talk about why do we see IoT as security concerns? What's the concerns with IoT today, like with embedded devices? What's the main reasons? Dave, go.
One of the things that I find a lot is it tends to be time to market issues for a lot of the manufacturers.
Yeah.
And they're trying very hard to get their widget or whatever their gadget is out in front of the customers. And by and large, they tend to bypass security. Like with the Mirai botnet, we saw 60 plus sets of credentials within the code that were default usernames and passwords. And this is a problem that never should have been there, because programmatically, there's no reason why when you open up the box and get out your coffee maker or whatever internet-enabled device you have, that it doesn't prompt you for a new password on initial login.
Yeah. Yeah. Time to market. Yeah.
Well, margins.
Margins. Yeah.
Well, margins, and we have these products where 1 cent is one of the example, and you have 20 cents for a TPM secure element type of device, but also they don't have anybody as far as the ODMs, the original device manufacturers, the outsourced contractors who are building the software stack. They don't have any security on staff. They're small teams, China, Taiwan based, basically.
Yeah.
And I would say that culture is very much the villain here.
Yep.
And that's for the whole IT security. It's great for the security business to say that, hey, security is really, really hard, you should hire us. And it's also great for the general programmer because they're like, security is really, really hard, so I'm getting excused for fucking up on basic hygiene.
I think for smaller IoT devices and vendors and manufacturers, time to market is definitely priority number one, because money, dollars. But I think more established OEMs and manufacturers, let's say, I don't know, Nest, for example, they could push security down to like the ODM and require them to be liable to any type of security bugs that they introduce, or even fix those and patch those. And be on staff for however many number of years. And I noted in my talk earlier, when I was at Balkan Linksys, this is what we did for new products. So moving forward, I think that's probably one route to go and one way to go without getting regulation involved, especially in different industry verticals. But that's again one way that you can push these small companies, ODM vendors, to at least have security either in mind and staff and design as well from the beginning.
What do you think about, could one argue that we have like two fields of this? We have the consumer appliance, where culture and know-how could potentially be a problem as well. We're talking about the Mirai botnet. Has anyone here don't heard about the Mirai botnet? Doesn't know what it is? No, everybody heard about it. So it's actually more or less consumer devices, right? It's like IP cameras and whatnot. Let's say my parents have an IP camera. And we find remote code execution, it's totally broken. They don't know that. They don't have any idea how to update their firmware. I don't think everyone in this room, maybe everyone in this room updates its firmware on their routers, but a lot of people don't. Could that potentially could integrate with the culture thing that we need to perhaps maybe educate our users?
It's often a manual process as well to update your firmware and be alerted or recognize that there is a new firmware update available and what the firmware updates. So.
That's awesome.
Because of Windows.
Somebody's being bad.
Was it update? Automated updates.
On cue.
Sweet. I didn't plan that.
That's awesome.
It won't be affected by WannaCry.
No, right? So, and then we have, I agree with you guys that you said time to market is a factor. And like when we look at the hardware, can we see any, like, do we use a lot of generic hardware as well? Is that your opinion as well? There is a lot of standard-based boxes?
No.
No?
And a lot of the problems too is like in that they have the time to market issues. They're trying to get fast, cheap out the door, and we're seeing a lot of problems that are being reintroduced that we solved a long time ago. For example, there's one brand of product that is an IoT-related device, consumer-grade thing, that has Heartbleed built into it.
Yeah.
It comes pre-installed because they're using deprecated libraries. And again, this is where a security review would have caught that before it ever went out the door. So unfortunately, a lot of these devices I got louder. A lot of these devices, they have planned obsolescence built into them. So the consumer-grade devices, they want you to buy the next widget, the next shiny thing. But that doesn't translate when you're looking at power systems, ICS, and things to that effect, because these are systems that will be in the field for 30 plus years.
Yeah.
So there has to be a much better way to do it, because you can't run the risk of affecting latency and things like that.
When we're talking about embedded system in general, we actually have a lot of ICS system or SCADA systems there, where the life cycle is super long. And that's a potential problem as well. You have this X-ray machine at a hospital that needs to run Windows XP because of reasons.
Well, it's funny because there's two ends of the spectrum. You have the ICS SCADA, where they have legacy embedded devices that are heavily dependent on but can't be updated, which are really, really expensive, like millions of dollars, even if they wanted to update. So they accept the risk and segregate or basically air gap, whatever you want to call it, into a different side of the network. And then you have the consumer side where the margins are thin and there's no incentives to build in security from design stages with small, newer devices, that is. But yeah, there's totally different ends of the spectrum, but they're still very relevant and still contribute to what we have as far as the impact of IoT and how it affects the internet.
Emma mentioned pacemakers and insulin pumps and so forth. That's another issue as well, because I don't know what the life expectancy is for the pacemaker.
It's 10 years.
10 years.
My grandma just got it installed.
So you need to
10
change
years.
it then.
But the thing about pacemaker is also that, okay, you actually want your pacemaker to be remotely accessible, because it's much better to have that risk than to have the risk of opening up your body again and again and again and again for every patch that you need to do.
And to build on that, it also depends on what's your risk level. Like the former U.S. Vice President Dick Cheney, he had all remote access to his disabled.
Yeah.
Because, well, he was such a lovely
Well,
guy.
I think Barnaby Jack, when he was alive, actually had a proof of concept where you can actually brick the firmware in a quite large of a distance. I don't remember how far it was, but it was a lot longer reach that was actually supplied by the manufacturer.
Yep.
And that is not super good if you're a vice president to get
No,
nuked.
it would not have ended well for him.
No.
But basically also, like, even though you would want to have remote access, it doesn't mean that you should have bad remote access. No? Yeah, and maybe it's not a good idea to have it internet connected. Maybe you want some kind of air gapping. You want at least some kind of threat modeling.
Yeah.
And basic just looking at things.
So what do you
How
think
hard can it be, really?
what could we actually do about it as a community in whole? What can we do? It's hard to, if you send out, I know of someone that might have reported a huge cable modem incident with one of the largest ISPs in Sweden, and they were not capable to actually ship a firmware to their clients because they couldn't. They didn't have the infrastructure. So what can we do as consumers and as a community to make it better? What do you think? Yeah, go.
Well, I think that the community is already doing what we need to do, but we just need to do it a bit more.
Yeah?
Basically, you're talking about this. We need to educate. We need to start with outreach. We need to start being nice to people and try to understand why they're having issues. I mean, like the WannaCry was already patched, but there are so many different devices that didn't, or the patch was out there, but very many people didn't download it, and that's because they can't. And so we have to look at why is this a problem. We have to look at maybe stop developing for other engineers and start developing for people. I'm not saying that engineers aren't people.
Well, you kind of did. No?
Well, I've met some that. So sorry, yeah. To build on exactly
User
what you,
experience.
yeah, to build on exactly what you're saying, it really is about a greater level of education, and I don't mean necessarily within our own cadres, but beyond that, talking to figuring out some way to push this information to our parents that are at home that look at the computer and say, "Oh, I can't find the button for the internet." These folks have absolutely no idea how to update these devices, and that's one of those things is, I understand planned obsolescence, I get it, there's a revenue model to be had there, but on the same token, there has to be some level of diligence that's applied to people that just don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And it has to be made simpler and easier to manage. I mean, Fitbit does a good job of managing their devices. Why can't that be applied to other verticals?
Sure.
I know plenty of, let's say, like I mentioned, like DVRs that were affected by Mirai and IP cameras, but the other manufacturers who weren't affected, they now force updates and force everyone to change their password. And even if you install a new DVR, force update, force change your default admin password in the UI.
Yeah.
And that's just one step, and they recognize that really quick, that, hey, we got to make these unique, even if it's up to the user. If they choose admin, that's up to them. But they require them, and they also have a little like password strike. I bought a few of them just for research, and I was surprised right away. I was like, wow, I haven't seen that before. I mean, right away they took some action. So we're progressing. It's just taking a little bit of time, but not too much time. I think we'll get there at some point. But there's always going to be those bugs left behind by third-party contractors, and ODMs is the way I define them as.
I think you said a really good thing about admin. Like, people don't know what is a secure password. Also, usually, like, we don't want passwords. Like, stop using passwords. We need to go away from, like, that passwords is also kind of a way to blame the user instead of making a system that is usable. You blame the user, or you implement a system not according to spec.
That's probably
easy.
in use cases, though, right? I mean, IoT in general, it depends on the use case and where it's being deployed, and the industry vertical as well, and regulation, not regulated. There's definitely different use cases. It's not, IoT as a whole, and these different security controls apply to everything. I mean, everything has its own time and place. So I think, yes, do away with passwords in some industry verticals is doable. But when you have, IoT in general, there's different attack surfaces, many from web to mobile to RF. It's hard to authenticate and do that securely without no user interaction at all. But secure by default is something that we can do as a tech community, or at least push that from design.
And then there are also some implementations of passwords that are usable and that are somewhat secure.
Yeah.
You don't have to use MD5 hashes.
Yeah. So if we go back to the OEMs there, do you think that today they're actually focusing on security work from the get-go, or is it something that sort of happens, or what do you think? What's your take on that?
I think that we're seeing a lot of retroactive attempts to fix these sort of things, because in a lot of cases they already have an established code base for whatever they've built.
I agree, yeah.
And they're really trying to go back and wedge it back into place, which is not uncommon for any other vertical that you look at. I mean, I spent 9 years in power systems. I still wake up screaming because there was one ICS vendor who will remain nameless, had a default username password that was hard coded, and we tried to get that changed, and it was roughly $500,000 Canadian in order to get it changed as a change request.
Yeah.
Did you ask nicely?
We asked nicely the first time. Second time wasn't so pretty.
Yeah. So what do you think the readiness for security breaches as well for OEMs? Do you think are they good? Are they bad? Could they be better? What's your encounters? What's your feel? What's your take?
For OEMs,
Yeah.
I mean,
Let's say you're a big ISP and you buy like a couple of million devices, and you find terrible remote code execution.
ISPs is a different situation.
Yeah?
They do deploy these smart home infrastructures, and
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the ISP space, but I mean, connected vehicle space, they're getting it real quick. Medical space, they're getting on board. But as far as being open to research and open to security and open to building in security or abiding by or working with the community as a whole, I think those industries are going. And some major OEMs for consumer are. ICS is a very closed system, and I know I work with people with I Am the Calvary, and we're trying. Some of the guys work for ICS vendors, and they're trying to get these devices in more people's hands. But again, they're expensive. They're millions of dollars. So it's about getting, I mean, I think we're even having, possibly at DEF CON, they're working on, for example, the voting system for the US over at DEF CON. But I mean, the more people, the more eyes, the better. And you see bug bounties, and bug bounty platforms have these IoT products and vendors out there, and that's good PR, and not only good PR, but it's good for the internet as a whole and our community and consumers as well.
Yeah. Did you have something? No?
Well, okay. Honestly, I think we're at a pivot point where acceptance of the conversation is starting to take place.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that had to be born on the heels of something catastrophic event like we saw with Mirai. That was a problem that never had to happen.
Yeah, I agree. But it's sort of a good thing that it happened, because it needs to get, in my opinion, I think it needs to get worse in order to get better. And I think the consumer as a whole needs to be affected more, and then they will actually be more aware.
I'm not sure if that works, but I mean,
hopefully.
You could put it in the perspective like the Sony hack influenced the entertainment industry like hugely. Like they now.
But that was a good thing. We got movies for free. Or no, oops. Redact that one.
But I mean, just their perspective on security. Like they all started hiring teams, and they're all like security first, and they didn't want to be in that center eye of, hey, we didn't do our due diligence type of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that it's important that security risks must become business risks.
Yeah.
And as soon as they become that, we will have that incentive to actually do something good.
Yeah, and accountability, I think, is important as well. That somebody actually owns up to the risk. Yeah, right? That's what you mean.
Yeah, exactly. And like when it comes to that first paradigm of security that Bruce Schneier was talking about, that we document, you have to document when you do a bridge, you have to like do checks and balances, you have to do checklist and lean and blah, blah, blah. And that didn't come from nowhere. There have been many people dying from train accidents. There have been many people dying from bridges falling down, or from buildings falling down and earthquakes and stuff. So we always learn from these terrible incidents. So maybe we need those incidents.
I agree and am vexed at the same time, because in Montreal and Canada, we had a bridge collapse recently that had been standing for about 40 years. Luckily, nobody died in that particular incident, but when my wife and I were on our honeymoon, we went over a bridge in Spain on a bus, and the bridge was held together by pressure. It was built by the Romans 2,000 years ago using interlocking stones. It was able to support a bus. It had been standing for 2,000 years, but nowadays we're making things like bridges that collapse in 40 years.
But that's survival bias.
Survival bias, yes, but it's sort of, when you lend that over to the IoT side, I'm worried that we're worried so much about making money that we're bypassing the fundamentals.
Yes.
Also note that the ASIS and D-Link slap in the hand from the FTC, I mean, that hasn't happened, and that's huge.
Yeah.
Thousands of dollars, not only getting fined, but like mandated to get pen tests.
Yeah.
Again, that's not, usually you'll get fined by like, WPA2, like WEP being installed. Like FTC is known to like mandate everybody to do WPA2.
Disable VPS and
Yeah. Well, no, not WPS, but I mean, if you're using WEP, you're gonna get in trouble. You're gonna get fined. But I mean, now it's like not only are you getting fined, now you have to get pen tests.
No.
So that's that's new. But it's also similar to other industry verticals, like or other big companies you work with as a partner. Like if you want to work with Google, you have to have either abide by a security framework, as well as show some sort of pen test report. Similar in a way, but also.
And we're back.
And to double back on about the ISPs, I'm a little less concerned about the vulnerabilities contained in the devices when you see an ISP in Asia, as an example, that shipped out home routers to their users with the control panel being publicly accessible with a default credential set.
Yeah.
So every one of their customers was affected. Something that simple is something that could have been caught on the way out the door.
Yeah. So, what do the audience think? Do you have any inputs to this discussion? Don't be shy.
Got one back
Yeah,
there.
we have a lot of them.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
nice.
Johan,
All
run!
right, so who's first? Over here?
So today there have been a lot of talk about issues that the industry have and some suggestions how to solve them. But one thing that I've been lacking is how to properly handle deprecation. Say if you're a company that develop a light bulb for $40 or something, consumers can't expect that to be supported for 15 years. No one would pay for it. So, like, what are some actual suggestions that you could give vendors regarding deprecation? Or should they like do a brick the device on purpose after a 10-year period? Or what are the options available except for building like solid software?
So the options for, if you don't mind me jumping in.
Go ahead.
The options for the consumer, unfortunately, are somewhat limited until you vote with your dollars en masse. So with those type of devices, I think you said a phone. That was what you were talking about earlier. Yes? No? A low-end device. Okay, so a low-end Android phone or a low-end device of some description that's consumer grade. Again, we go back to the planned obsolescence problem. The vendor actually built this in so that after a certain amount of time it is no longer supportable, so they can sell you a new device. As a consumer, that sucks. I mean, that's unfortunate, but that's the reality that we live in. So if consumers start voting with their dollars en masse, that can actually change that tide. Do I have a good answer for you? No, I don't, regrettably.
There are some recommendations provided by FTC about sunsetting devices. I mean, I think this past year we saw a company that got acquired by Google, and it was an IoT hub, and they turned it down. People relied on the IoT hub. I don't know what it's called, Revolve, or I don't know what it was.
I think you're actually right. I think it was called Revolve. It was,
Yeah,
they,
it was
they
one
killed
of
it
those.
almost instantly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's no like set in stone, rule or standard. I think it's if you build a product and say you're going to support it for 7, 8 years, or 10 years maybe, then you'd have to do that. But I mean, think about use case with the lock. That's probably a big deal, right? And you have to contact the lock's cloud, whatever cloud infrastructure it is, and that cloud infrastructure is free for us. We just buy the product, however much money it is, and they support the whole cloud infrastructure. But I mean, I guess one way, like I said, would be to be upfront and transparent and say this device will be supported for X amount of years. And I said that there's some recommendations on that. But again, there's nothing set in stone. Not many people are being transparent about that and blatant, for their products, unfortunately.
Cool. Did that answer the question? Yeah, more or less? Not really, right?
It's a hard question.
Well, there's not a
Yeah.
right answer to it.
No,
Yeah.
I don't think so either. It's a hard question.
I'm
It's
sure
like-
at some point there will be a right answer, but right now there isn't. Until we find the heavily reliant on, let's say, a car that doesn't have, it's not going to be supported, and you still have to unlock your car, and it's not going to be supported after 5 years. And
But that car also cost 20,000 euros, or 30,000,
Yeah.
or 50,000.
sure, yeah, that was an example. But yeah.
Or flip it on its head, you miss a payment, they lock you out of your car.
Yeah.
Ransom.
It could get ugly fast.
So, one more? Yeah?
You mentioned going after the money, or
Yep.
getting people to vote en masse. VCs have a lot of democracy in that regard. They have a lot of say.
Sorry, you said VCs and democracy in the same sentence.
They have a lot of power.
Yes.
To what extent do you think it would be useful to convince venture capitalists to mandate security, as essentially they're balancing risk versus the chance of an exit, a profitable exit.
Right.
If you can convince them,
Sorry, say again.
if you could convince them that this is something that would increase the profitability of their exit, wouldn't that be a force multiplier?
Honestly, yes. If you're able to articulate in a way that they understand that they're going to make more money because it's a better secured product, then yeah, there is the chance that you'd be able to sell them on that, but they're really in it for profit. And that, understandably, that's their business model. But yeah, if you can make it in a business case like that, fantastic. honestly, that's the first time I've actually heard somebody bring that up, so I don't know that anybody's actually doing that.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. But even trying to advocate security or promote within an established company, working with marketing and trying to work with marketing to get your point across. I've done that. I've tried to go that route. Basically, the short answer is what I got was like security doesn't sell, unfortunately, for consumers. You'll get rooted, get popped, whatever it may be, and consumers will still buy that product. And this is proven with stores and things like that have been breached.
Cool. One more? Yeah.
I mean, just comment that, you say security doesn't sell, but there was also usability doesn't sell when we had 10 years ago, like the smartphones were just adding up functions and no usability. And then someone came around and fixed that, right? So let's hope that there will be a fixing security IoT coming up, right?
Yeah, oh, totally. I'm on the same boat as you, I hope.
Okay, well, should we wrap it up? I didn't think we actually solved anything. We just.
You wanted to solve stuff?
Yeah, I don't know. But so, what do we keep?
We have the party to do that. So.
Yeah, we have a party to fix it. Yeah, and everybody here, look at them. They're so into beer. I can see it. They're thirsty. So yeah, without further ado, let's end this. Thank you so much for being here, and
Thanks,
thank
everyone.
you for being here. Thanks.